Well, sometimes you do need something like music, like listening to the songs tonight. Is Caleb still here? Is he? Yeah, thank you, because for me music is just so powerful and so beautiful. The space between, it's uplifting to me, even when it's sad. There's something in that that's beautiful. And your song about, the one about love, what I start to do with music too is turn those love songs around, because not everyone's going to find great romantic love. You're lucky, you've got it. We're not all going to find...
Dianne and I haven't got it, is that what you're saying?
We've got each other, Bruno.
Oh, I didn't know we had a romantic thing going.
Well, you're not whispering in my ear. Has he whispered in your ear?
That's a whole other story.
So not everyone's... that is a whole other story. But I started to turn love songs around because I know this sounds ridiculous, but if we don't love our own self, the self that connects us to everybody else and that unique part of us, if we can't love that, then things are going to be really tough. So I hear a love song and I can turn it back to loving myself. Does anyone else do that? It's a bit crazy. Oh, thank you.
Caleb and I.
Oh, good. Because really, in the end, everything comes from that. Once you've got that, and I know about the self-esteem issue with anyone with a mental illness, that can be really low, but building that up and just to feel one with ourselves and to know that whatever stuff is going on, there's that core of self-care and self-love is a great technique. And through music, I can get that good feeling.
Dianne, if I come to you in some state of psychological distress, you are not going to say to me, Bruno, tell me about your childhood, tell me about all the things there that you're cross about. You don't do that, do you?
I tend to like to be in the present moment. Everyone's story is unique, and it's lovely to hear it, but I kind of get the feeling quite often that we can get stuck in an early story. And really all that any of us have is this present moment. I try to live in it as much as I can. And look at it, it's pretty beautiful in here.
Are you living in it at the moment? I'm not trying to be flippant.
No, I'm actually living in it at the moment. I mean, it's a nice place to be. Babies do it. Pets can do it. Other animals can do it.
Bees do it.
Who does it?
Bees do it.
Bees do it. That's the song. And, I just think that we forget to do it. We're agonising over what we did yesterday and worrying about what we're going to do tomorrow. And it's a bad habit that humans have. And yet you look at a small child and they are very much in the moment. So just practising it, that's all.
Yeah, a bunch of kids around a coffee table, the crayons will be there, the paper will be there, and they'll just get to making stuff.
Yeah.
If I've got a group of adults, I've got to coax them into that space where they go on, splash the paint around.
Because their mind's thinking, I wouldn't be able to do this, this is ridiculous, there's all of that stuff that the mind does, and unfortunately most of it's negative. It'd be nice if our mind was telling us how incredible we are and how creative we are.
Bruno, you're 6'5" and you're definitely... Dianne, a few years ago you came to VU and you came to a writing project. It had nothing to do with me.
Well, it did.
But tell us about the psychologist who used to write.
And it's because of it. Let's face it, Bruno said, there's this write a book in a month. It was in 2010. And I write a book in a month, that's amazing. And I'd always thought writing would be, something quite creative to do. When I became a psychologist, I'd gone back to uni to become a great writer. But the thing is, I found that if you're going to be a great writer, you actually have to write something. So I actually took on psychology as an extra unit and finished that and became a psychologist. And I thought, that's not quite what I had in mind. So Bruno said this thing, and it was a friend of his who was running the course, and you met for 6 Saturdays. Did anyone else do it? No, nobody else? And because I signed a contract that I would write 50,000 words in 1 month. That's 1,500 words a day.
Which is not a lot on a daily basis.
But I knew, I signed a contract, I would do it, and I did it. And the great thing they said was, don't edit, just keep on writing. Just write, even if you say, I don't know what to write, just write it. And at the end of the time, I had 54,000 words. I'd done nothing with it until I sent it to you last week. emailed it to you. But what was great about it was stories like Barry, not like your stories. Your stories are very authentic stories, but it was little snippets of experiences from my work as a psych nurse and a psychologist. And I just was overwhelmed with how beautiful the stories were and the people I worked with. It gave me just great comfort, and I thought what a privilege it was to have these 40-something years working with people. What a privilege. And I wouldn't have got that if I hadn't written it.
So it wasn't so much just trying to figure stuff out for yourself.
No.
Was that an unexpected pleasure that came with kind of putting this together and saying...
Totally.
Yeah.
I started this book writing it was a Bob Dylan song called Shelter from the Storm, which is quite a song about the horror of the human condition, really. It's possibly about the Vietnam War and being a Vietnam veteran, but it could be many things. If you don't know it, it's worth having a look at, Shelter from the Storm. So that's how it started, and each chapter was a line from the song. And it just unravelled that way. So it started with music and it ended up in this amazing
So what you thought was going to be a gift for your children so that they
Yes,
might
I
have
did
some
think
understanding of their mum became something deeper.
became something much deeper. Yeah, I thought this is the writing I can say, here kids, I could leave you a piece of furniture, but this is something about me. And yeah, it was a gift. So
Beautiful.
Thanks to you.
Barry, you met your wife, Holly's mum, in my writing class. That was a little bit naughty. Tell us. There's Barry that lives with bipolar, but there's Barry, the creative man who loves to write stories. And when I've taken you to any audience, whether it was ESL students at the lowest level or naughty VCAL students or whatever, I've never seen a man that cuts through the way you do. What is it about? What does story do for you? And what does the writing, when it's not just kind of getting rid of those chaotic thoughts, what is it doing at its deepest level for you?
I guess at its deepest level, I feel free.
How can we, who may not have lived in that depressive state to that degree, because I think we've all suffered from acute sadness and melancholia and all kinds of things, but that bottom depression, that really low, what's it like? Can you tell us in layman's terms or give us a kind of image for it that we could try and get an understanding of it?
There's no colour. There's not much sound. Sound is garbled. If TV's on, it's just garbled. If anyone talks, you're not sure what they're saying to you. And it's like a shrink. You're trying to shrink down and disappear. And I guess, yeah, the nth degree of that is wanting to die.
And how do you get relief from that? Are you dementedly going out and praying for some relief to take you out of that state, or do you just have to wait for it to work its way through? What?
I'm blessed. I'm blessed with a wonderful family who never failed to come to my aid. And I've seen and I've met many people in psych wards who, over the years, sadly have lost contact with their families through different, people get fed up with the continual up and down, or particularly if someone's living with voices, or someone's into substance abuse, may lose that family, my heart breaks for those people. Because I am so blessed that every single time I'm down, my family, my friends are there.
And in the deepest moment of that love that you feel is enough to can still penetrate that muffled, soundless world.
I always say, as far as suicide goes, I could do it to me, but I couldn't do it to them. Because I owe them too much.
Donna, we spoke by that beautiful river that other day, and you didn't ask me one question I asked you about 55, but I'm glad we had our conversation. You talked a lot. You said there's this loneliness out there, there's this so much of that. And for people that you're caring from to have those conditions and then to also be lonely and isolated. And we're needing to have a conversation about mental well-being that broadens it, so we talk about loneliness and we talk about isolation and we talk about friendship and we talk about shyness and all these kinds of things, because I don't think we're having that kind of conversation.
And about homelessness.
And homelessness.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, we're not having those conversations in general, in society, as well as definitely in the health fields. We don't most doctors don't sit down with their patients and ask them, so what are you doing about your loneliness? They don't ask it because it's too scary, it's too big a basket. It's because people can't medicate that, people can't wish that away. And quite often people tell me how lonely they are. And you see people sitting in their isolation because family don't come and visit, they don't have friends. And you can sense it's palpable. A lot of people won't tell you they're lonely because it's just too hard.
It feels like an admission of failure, isn't it, to say I'm lonely? It's like I haven't got a capacity to make my own friends or something like that.
Yeah.
But we feel it, don't we, at all kinds of times.
Yeah.
Donna, if the top of the mountain is the moment where we get clarity about mental illness and mental well-being, and where, and you started down on the plains, where are we on the road to that kind of peak? Are we still kind of in our infancy in terms of understanding this and being able to really put words that are meaningful to understanding it?
I think it is getting better. That there are organisations. It's in advertising. It's more out there. People are speaking about it a little bit more. But as I said the other day, if you went to a potential employer and said, by the way, I have bipolar or I have schizophrenia and I hear voices.
And I've been in prison as well.
And I've been in prison. People don't want a bar of you. And so we're talking the talk, but we're not walking the walk. Well, I think we're a long way off walking the walk in our communities. But it is getting a little bit better, but it's still...
And where are the signs that some change is afoot?
Well, I see, within the space that I work in, I see it, it's everywhere, but unfortunately it's not translating out to our communities. Without getting political, our governments keep ripping money out of mental health, they're shutting down spaces, there's not much drug and alcohol rehabilitation for people, and mentally ill people are ending up in prisons.
They're the new asylums.
They're the new asylums, and our prisons are full of mentally ill people that aren't getting the right treatment and care because there's only so many beds for people, and so they're getting stuck in prison.
Dianne, you've worked in prisons from a long way back, and we're hearing they're the new asylums too. Can I ask you that question too? How far up that hill towards great clarity and awareness of this issue are we? And politically, do we need to have ministers for mental health? Is that going to help too, or is it a broader kind of sweeping change that needs to kind of come across?
Yeah, it's a big question. I can look at it from, for example, when my grandmother in the 1930s was admitted and there was no medication and she was in a straitjacket.
She was in Sunbury.
She was at Sunbury, yeah. I didn't know this story until I went to become a psych nurse and met her first cousin. And she said, did you know that our grandmother was certified to this very hospital in the 1930s? And it sort of made sense of my family story. I'd just never heard about it. So there was no medication. Today, that grandmother who had postnatal depression after 9 babies in a rural property with no support and a whole range of other things would have got the treatment. She would have been in hospital, she would have got medication and lots of support. So in that way, we've come leaps and bounds in that way. But there's so many other pressures now. I was just thinking about it. We have different pressures now. Just to keep going financially, to survive, to have things. We all seem to be driven to need things. So we live in a world where unless you've made it and you're a success and you've got all these things happening for you, then perhaps you're a failure. And if you haven't come from a family with support, then you've got nothing. And the increase in the kind of drugs that I see now out on the streets, the crystal methamphetamine, the ice, and things that we just didn't have around back in the day. These are worrying signs for me because I don't feel that we're getting through to young people enough, and yet we're doing more with adolescent psychology and psychiatry than ever before. We're just not getting to people young enough. We're not giving families support. Children aren't taught about this stuff about the mind and about how they can self-soothe and how they can look within. We don't learn these things. I think that would be wonderful if we could teach this from a very young age, yoga, meditation, as a natural part. Like they do this in some cultures. So in that way, I'm concerned that we're going on. Maybe I'm just being pessimistic, but I just see that we're perhaps striving for the wrong things in a Western capitalist society. So that's another problem.
Does that leave you in an agitated state to say, in my lifetime, I'm not going to see those things? Do you?
Look, no, I'm not a pessimist. I am an optimist, and I hope that each one of us can make a difference that way in our own lives. And when we make a difference in our own life, it does move on to others and have an effect on others. I just think that, perhaps we're at the danger of losing our way a little bit as a society. I mean, there's a lot of isolation, as we were talking about before, and communities coming together like this is so wonderful, but it probably doesn't happen enough. And I'm, always looking for ways that we can bring communities together, bring people together in whatever way that nurtures people. And that's why this sort of thing, your Twilight School, is a wonderful thing.
We yearn community, don't we? Everyone will say, I wish I knew my neighbours better.
Yes.
Tim Costello says, well, roll up your sleeves and go and meet your neighbours and invite them in and have your street parties and that. But we don't seem to want to do that either, do we?
That's right. And then you do that, some people do try to connect with their neighbours, and things get, because people are in all different states of being, and that can actually go wrong for them. So, it's not always safe to do that either. But in whatever way we can do it, I think it's the only way, really. Whether that's in the creative arts is the best way, and any hobbies that people have and any way that they can connect with one another is pretty special.
You still sound hopeful, Dianne, after a lifetime of working in what I can only imagine is the most,
I'm still, of course I'm hopeful. I mean, I always do see the other side of things, and I just wish that, look at the world. You can look at the world and you can say it's
gone mad.
It's gone a little bit mad, but it's always been a little bit mad. There's always been pockets of disharmony around the world, and I still feel that they start with each individual mind and the thoughts that each ego and each mind is sending out. So again, I say we can't change the world. I can't change anyone except myself. So for each one of us, beginning with our own self.
And if I change myself, I have some chance of...
Well, it certainly radiates out to others. That's for sure. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We can't change others, but we can certainly radiate out.
The best therapist in my neighbourhood in Seddon is the lady who makes coffee in the morning.
There you go.
And I see people, they walk in, and I know the ones because they slip around the side, and I've gone, they're in confessional mode. And there's this young, gorgeous person who left school fairly early and makes the coffee. And I go, if you weren't there, we would all be bananas. We would be raging because we offload, we tell you everything. And she's there patient, and I tell her, I say, you are extraordinary. You are doing the work of a therapist.
Yes.
And she laughs it off. But I think she is. Am I overstating
No,
that?
no, that is a perfect example of it. And people do it in their own work in little ways that you don't even think that you're doing it. Can make a difference in so many ways like that.
Barry, you've been in some great hospitals, you've been in some lousy hospitals, I've visited you there, I've sometimes gone, I don't think I can sit here much longer, they look like awful places, but what's your view of it all? How are we going to improve our broader understanding, and how are we going to get this kind of to some level of where we start to kind of act on it, you know?
Gee whiz. That's a big question.
You sat on my red couch and pontificated for hours, something like.
How long have we got?
Yeah, how long have we got?
But you must get angry, mustn't you?
Look, I get angry. Like you say, I've been in some good hospitals in Melbourne, and I've been in some not so good hospitals in the regional areas. I've met some wonderful psych nurses and some not so wonderful psych nurses.
Any on the stage at the moment?
If they were all like this,
Yeah.
I think I'd stay there longer.
I think I'd be developing a bit of bipolarity myself. Donna, will you come and visit me and practice mindfulness with me down by the river?
We've done that, the penguin.
That's right.
I think what Dianne was saying about society and about, particularly about the young, I despair about the young. I'm nearly 60, you know, I don't know how long I've got left. Put it this way, I've got more behind me than what I've got in front of me. But when I've been in hospital and I've seen young kids in their early 20s who have been on drugs, been involved in crime, have lost their family contact.
Yeah.
That just breaks my heart. I go into hospital and I come out sadder for them than I do for myself, because it just breaks me heart to see young people so lost.
Have we failed them, Barry, at some collective level, as teachers, carers, parents, whatever?
Gee whiz, as a parent, and as a room full of parents, we all do what we think is best, and all you can do is your best. All anyone can do is their best. And you see families where kids are raised exactly the same way, and one will prosper and live a good life, and the other one will turn to drugs and crime. And where's the rhyme or reason to that? So to say we failed is a bit harsh. It's a bit harsh.
And we turned to each other, didn't we? So that kind of saved us, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Barry's going to bury me if I go before him and do my eulogy. We've already decided about that.
Well, I did the thing at your 60th, so I think it's only fair I do you.
That's right. Sorry, Donna, you don't get to do my eulogy. Dianne, you don't either. We're going to end with some readings. Barry, we're going to ask you to read one more piece. Dianne, I haven't told you this, but I'm going to ask you to read your love and fear piece too.
Okay. Ooh.
Really, from your
I have to get my glasses. I'm
Yes,
old.
You're old.
I could borrow you.
And Donna, one of the things I asked you to do when we met, because I said bring some pieces, because I want to get a sense of the stuff that kind of got into your soul and that, and you brought a beautiful poem along too, and you brought some writings of Paulo Coelho too, which I would have loved to have just talked about him all night as well too. Do you mind reading that poem that you brought tonight? I think you should. Like why I said, do you mind, and then I think you should.
So what magnification are your glasses?
3.5.
Shit. No, excuse me.
I've never heard a psychologist use the SH blank T word. Are they going to blow your mind again?
Oh, that's pretty good, actually.
Donna, can we get you to read that? And I know you're going to hate me for doing that.
Okay.
Tell us why you picked this, and is this the closest poetic summation of what Donna Melia believes, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it is. There's this writer and poet and soulful woman called Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and she wrote a book years ago called Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I read it in my early 20s and it resonated with me.
Really?
And even now I still follow her because she has a lot to say. And
So if you're having a deep, dark moment in your work, you might turn to something like that.
Yeah, I've got her pages earmarked
Really?
from her book. I just find her so insightful. So and she speaks to me and a lot of other people. And now too, because of social media, the wonderful thing is you can see that a lot of people feel the same way in like-mindedness and people commenting on the same thing. So that's been a new avenue as well. And this was in her book.
I like the fact you haven't got glasses on.
Oh, I do, yeah. And she saw those who were truly kind and went near to them. She found her mate and stayed all the days of her life. She discerned the brave and came close to them. She apprehended the faithful and joined with them. She saw bewilderment under anger and hastened to soothe it. She saw love in the eyes of the shy and reached out to them. She saw suffering in the stiff-lipped and courted their laughter. She saw need in the man with no words and spoke for him. She saw faith deep in the woman who said she had none and rekindled hers from her own. She saw all things with her lash of wolf, all things true and all things false, all things turning against life and all things turning toward life, all things seen only through the eyes of that which weighs the heart with heart and not with mind alone.
That is a beautiful reading. Donna Melia, everyone. Aren't you glad you read that now?
Oh, yes, Bruno.
Dianne, can you just put a bit of context to what I've asked you to
I
do?
just have to remember. Is this part of the book? This is from the book. Yeah. Okay, that's 54,000 words, but I'm not going to do all of that. It's a page and a half. Okay, so
She's stalling.
yeah. How long have we got? Lock the doors. It's called Love and Fear.
And it's taken from the Lunig poem, isn't it?
It is indeed. Melbourne cartoonist Michael Lunig wrote, "There are only two things, love and fear. There are only two languages, love and fear. There are only two activities, love and fear. There are only two motives, two procedures, two frameworks, two results, love and fear, love and fear." My work with violent offenders and paranoid patients supports Lunig's message. In 1990, I was working the night shift as a psychiatric nurse on an adolescent residential unit. 17-year-old Rick was admitted, presenting with paranoid psychosis after making threats to kill his parents. I was in charge, working with a nurse who had no training in mental health. Rick was unsettled, pacing around the bedroom and talking to the walls. He refused assistance and was still fully dressed at midnight. Every half hour I approached Rick to have a chat, a hot milk, sedation. He ignored me and averted his gaze. I read his file and discovered that Rick had held his mother at knife point. My anxiety grew. This was an isolated unit set well away from the main hospital with no alarm system. We were caring for 7 other teenagers suffering from depression, anorexia nervosa and phobias. I was 3 months pregnant. I phoned the hospital supervisor who said she would visit if Rick was still awake at the next round. Shortly after our conversation, a loud thumping noise came from Rick's bedroom. When I approached the door, Rick came out with a knife in his hand, saying that he needed to kill his parents, who were agents of Satan. The other nurse picked up the phone, and Rick bailed me against the wall. If she rings for help, you're all dead. His eyes were dark and cold. The nurse froze with the phone in her hand. The knife was pointed at my abdomen. Crazy thoughts bounced around my head. I felt responsible for 8 teenagers, the nurse and my baby. I assured Rick that we wouldn't be calling anyone. The nurse remained in a trance, the best help that she could offer. And silently, I asked my wise self for guidance. This is what came forward. The story of a friend, and it was once told to me, of an Indian guru giving a talk at an ashram in New York. The meditation room went silent, and suddenly a dishevelled, agitated man approached the elderly guru and said, "You speak about love, but the world is full of hate. Love is bullshit." The man pulled out a gun and said to the guru, "What would you do if I killed you now?" The guru waved back his devotees who were rushing to his aid and said, "I would die loving you." And he gave his full attention to the stranger. The man fell to the ground and sobbed. Well, I didn't say anything to Rick, but I moved into a different state of awareness, contemplating the story I'd heard years before. From fear to love, my inner voice kept saying, from fear to love. I clearly sensed the fear in this young man and the absence of love. Peace and stillness began to flow and fear vanished. We stayed like that for some time, and he was waving the knife and talking about killing his evil parents. I could tell that Rick was hallucinating when he said, "They tell me you're a messenger of the devil. Do you believe in evil?" I told Rick that I can sense light and dark energy and that I'd really like to talk with him about it. And after some time he nodded, and I asked Rick to put the knife in a safe place. We sat on the couch and Rick described his paranoid delusions in great detail. I didn't say much. It was in the silence between us that a light shone. Rick finally fell asleep. He was certified the next day and transferred to a secure facility. I visited Rick a week later. He was very surprised to see me, and I told Rick that the person who confronted me that night was not really him. It was a fearful, deluded part of his mind. And when I reflect on meeting Rick, I am deeply grateful that no one was harmed. During that period of clarity and awareness, I felt that even death is not to be feared. Letting fear block love is the real tragedy.
Dianne Lee. Dianne, I suspect you haven't read in public your own work.
No,
Never before?
Never before.
Really?
Thanks, Bruno. Thanks, everyone.
I really appreciate it.
So that was a chapter from the amazing. Oh, thank you.
Oh, how about that? Kim, make note, we need to publish it. I'm leaving town. And last but not least, Barry Garner, can you put a bit of a background to what you're going to read for us?
Yeah, this, I spoke before about how my wife and I suffer from mental illness, and she couldn't be here tonight.
Excuse us, sorry.
So I thought I'd read this story about her. Hello, you beautiful creature. I often greet my wife with these words in the morning. I think she likes it. because she always responds with a big smile. Even over the last couple of months, while she's been depressed, she still warms to my line. Carolyn, like me, has bipolar. It's a curse. It's a monster that disappears for months at a time, only to come back when you least expect it. When you tell people you were depressed, they often ask, what brought it on? If only it was that easy. If only we could point to one event or situation that caused it, how easy it would be to control depression, how easy it would be to fight it. What my wife knows, and what I know, is when it comes to mental illness, clear explanations are hard to find. We've been married for 8 years, and during that time have taken turns at being the carer and the cared for. Our journey has been a gift from God. We understand each other, encourage each other, and help each other over the rough bits. If it wasn't for my beautiful creature, I don't know where I'd be. And she tells me she couldn't cope if we weren't a couple. Kaz recently had a stay in hospital. It just seemed that no matter how hard we tried at home, she just wasn't getting any better. So a psychiatrist decided she needed more care than I could provide. I felt useless, felt that no matter how much I'd experienced or read, there is a limit to what I could give. The hospital stay was good for her. It helped Carolyn by providing round-the-clock care and support. I couldn't do that because once I take my nighttime medication, I'm dead to the world. My beautiful creature was away for a month. I went in every day, and people said I was devoted. But it wasn't just her I was going in for. I went in most days for me, because I need to be near her, need to know we're still connected, lest I fade away myself. A week after Kaz came home, my mood crashed. For the first few days I tried to hang tough. I have to be strong, I told myself. I was terrified what would happen if we both got sick at the same time. We have 2 teenage kids at home, who, while being good kids, still need one of us to keep a hand on the helm. I didn't hang tough for long. On Monday, just gone, I broke down in front of her. I told her I had lost my grip. That the darkness which I had fought to hold back had crashed on me like a wave. My beautiful creature looked at me through her sad eyes, hugged me, and told me we would help each other. I don't reckon I've ever felt as loved as I did during that hug.
Barry Garner. Donna Melia, Dianne Lee, Barry Garner. Raucous applause.